Okay, it's 6 p.m. and it's time for me to do the fun part, which is to welcome all of you to Monterey County's first, and hopefully not last, impact screening of Beyond the Bridge, A Solution to Homelessness. I hope that everybody gets their own unique gift from watching this impact screening, and also from the discussion panel that is going to speak for about 45 minutes after the conclusion of the film. The discussion panel represents, and you can see there's a lot of seats up here, represents different segments of our community. So there's representation from agriculture, there's business, there's homeless services, there's government, several different levels of government, faith-based communities. Everybody needs to be at the table when we get together as a community to have a discussion about how Salinas and Monterey County are going to drastically reduce unsheltered homelessness. And I'm really, really looking forward to those discussions. So whether you're in the camp that says, you know what, the homeless will always be with us, and there's nothing we can do about that. Or whether you're in the camp that says, well, sure we can. We can put everybody into an apartment and we'll pay for it with government money. Or anywhere in between. This is for you. This is for you to really give a good, long thought to and be part of the solution. But before we get into that, I'm going to do some brief introductions, starting with our elected officials. These are people that we vote for, that commit their lives to public service, and they deserve special recognition. And I'm just going to ask that if they are here, because I do not have a comprehensive list of who here is and who isn't, just the ones that made reservations, if they could maybe just stand a little bit and wave a hand so that we can all recognize them. The first is Supervisor Luis Alejo. And understand, it's Tuesday night, so all the government meetings in this area happen on Tuesday evenings, right? So it's amazing that we've got city council members here. But the supervisors are probably going to end up coming a little bit later on, but they'll be here. Except for Wendy, who is in the back waving at me. Yay, Wendy, root asked you. Well done. We also have City Council Member Margaret DiRigo from the City of Salinas here in front. And seated next to her is Council Member Gloria De La Rosa and her better half Leo. And seated somewhere up front, I believe, is our illustrious Mayor, Dennis Donahue. We have also King City Mayor Mike Labar, who is also one of our panelists, doing double duty. We have the Sheriff Coroner of Monterey County, Tina Nieto. And another person who is not an elected, but somebody that I really cherish dearly as a friend, but also as a tireless advocate for the homeless, Roxanne Wilson, who is the director of Monterey County's Homeless Services. Is it a division or a department? Division. I got that right, what do you know? Mayor Velasquez, who is also a district director for State Senate District 4, is part of the panelists, and so they get introduced next. Like I said, our panelists come from many, many different sectors so that they can bring many different perspectives to the discussion panel that's going to occur after the film. Mark Drever, there, he raised his hand, is the co-founder and chief executive officer, sorry about that, Mark, of Organic Girl. You might have run into Organic Girl in your supermarket's cold section under premium salads. That's a business that he basically made with a couple of friends, and it turned really successful. Jessica Finney, there she is up front, is the Community Grants Director at Central California Alliance for Health. Eric Johnson has got a fan club here today. Is the Chief Executive Officer of R3, that stands for Rehabilitation, Restoration, and Respite. And we've already introduced Mayor LeVar. Megan Marshall, also a fan. Executive Officer of the California Interstate Council on Homelessness. And correct me if I'm wrong, Clement or Clement? Clement Miller is the Chief Operating Officer at Salinas Valley Memorial Healthcare System. And of course, you've met the sheriff as well. City of Soledad Mayor Ana Velasquez, who, as I mentioned, is also the District Director for Senate District 4, Ana Caballero's district.
14.
It's 14?
Yeah.
Really? Sure. Okay. Anna says yes, it's 14. Our panel moderator, who is also struggling with several different appointments today, is Yuri Anderson. Yuri is the Chief of Staff of Monterey County's 4th District Supervisor Wendy Bernascu, and also the Chair of the Board of Trustees for Monterey Peninsula College. And she is a superwoman with superpowers, and she's going to do a great job as our panel moderator. So, one more thing that I wanted to call your attention. Everybody should have gotten an event program. Of course, this talks all about the panelists and all of that, which is always good information. It doesn't give their emails or phone numbers, but it's all publicly accessible. But one important feature of this program is that it tells you who is paying for it, which is the Community Foundation for Monterey County, and they deserve a round of applause for bringing it to Monterey County. Also on the back, you're going to see in block and red, so that you can't possibly miss it, is a call to action block. So if you, at the end of this impact screening, feel motivated, feel infuriated, feel any strong, passionate emotion whatsoever, I expect you to call or email me with the information in this call to action block, because we want to keep you on a list of people that we're going to keep informed about the positive progress that we're going to be making toward solutions that are common sense, solutions that are accountable, solutions that work. So I'm going to give up the mic, but I'm going to call up our film producers, Don Sawyer and Tim Hashko, and they are going to speak about the film that you're about to see. I'm going to come out to the audience and just sit back and watch it and enjoy it, just like you.
Thank you so much, Jill, for inviting us here, and thank you guys for having us. This is actually a very cool job. I mean, we get to go to all over the country and speak with communities like you, and you watch our film, and that's the biggest honor of all. You guys have a beautiful place, by the way. The mountains are beautiful. Everything here is just beautiful. So we really appreciate being here. My name is Don Sawyer. I'm the producer and director of A Bigger Vision Films.
And my name is Tim Hashko. I'm cinematographer and editor of the film. And like Don, I'm really happy to be here, and I appreciate everybody coming out to watch the film and have an honest discussion afterwards. Like Don was saying, we're showing the film all around the country. We started with showing it in very big cities, you know, Denver, Seattle, New York, Boston. But I gotta be honest, you know, when we come to smaller places, we see a much larger turnout than in some of the larger cities. And we're very hopeful that actually in smaller towns like your town, the community can rally around a solution and solve the problem we believe can be solved. So really thank you for coming out.
So we have a film called Under the Bridge, the criminalization of homelessness, back in the day. And, you know, I was just kicking around Indianapolis. I used to live in LA, moved to Indianapolis. In LA, I went down to Skid Row a lot, and I would pass out food and clothes. But I didn't know anything about homelessness. And I went to Indianapolis, did the same thing, found a camp, and there was this guy named Maurice who was running the camp like a program. He coordinated services, he did all of these things, and he basically taught me what was actually going on in the homelessness space. And, you know, so we made this film, we told the truth, the city started to hate me, so we went outside of the city, and everybody around the country kind of was happy because we were showing the problem, but they would say, yeah, but what is the solution?
And right around that time when the city was hating Don, I met Don and started working with him, so I kind of got a little bit of that hate. We took that question seriously. You know, we were asked all around the country, what do you suggest we do about it? And what do we know, right? We just kind of like pointed the camera and we showed them the problem. So we took that seriously, started researching, and you know, long story short, several years later, we got the funding and we hit the road. Our goal was to drive all around the country and find that solution. We spent a year plus, visited 12 cities. We interviewed a reasonable amount of people, 250 plus interviews we have. And all the way from, you know, folks who are currently homeless to those who've been housed to mayors and governors and Congress people in Washington. And we met all kinds of amazing people, amazing programs. You know, this community is doing this great, and then that program is doing this in a very innovative way. But what we were looking for is you know, that answer to the question: is there a solution that can be not just a program, not just an innovation, but a solution that can be replicated from city to city, county to county, state to state? And we found it. We distilled hundreds of hours of interviews down to 84 minutes you're about to watch. And now we're traveling all around the country again, showing it to communities. And like I said, thank you for coming in.
We also found who's to blame for homelessness. Would you guys like to hear it? You guys want to know who's to blame? Nobody. Nobody's to blame for homelessness. Homelessness is the result of a massive systems design failure. It's a systemic problem. You have poverty, you have this continuum. People who are just at poverty, all the way down to homelessness, the poorest of the poor. And the drivers of poverty are all the same. But for some reason, this country cut homelessness out and set it on its own island. And over here on that island, there was an industry that grew up around it. And it's a service industry. Homeless folks are also called clients. So service industries depend on clients to survive. And industries are pre-designed to survive. You have to have clients to survive. So that natural incentive to end homelessness is not there. So the problem is these clients don't have any money. So they're paid, this industry is paid by entitlements. And anytime you have entitlements, there's a group of people that don't believe that group of people should get a dime, so it's always underfunded. Homelessness is chronically underfunded. So foundations then try to come in, but they work on a charity basis. And this group of people is among, if not the most hated group in this country. So there's not a whole lot of money that's coming from there. So they can't do the gap. This is all systemic stuff. It is not the government's fault. It is not service providers' fault. It's certainly not people with lived experience's fault. It is a system problem. You're about to see two communities that looked at the system and said, this sucks, we can't win this way. And they got together And they said, we have to fix this system. We have to modify it. We don't have to trash everything. We just have to fix it. And so this is Beyond the Bridge, a solution to homelessness that can be replicated from community to community. Thank you for listening to us.
My name is Yuri Anderson, and I have the honor of being your moderator tonight. If I could invite my panel, please join me on the stage and get started. I want to start by just saying how much I appreciate all of you being here tonight to view this film, to engage in this dialogue, to commit yourselves to being a part of the solution here in Monterey County. I hope that you take what you saw on the film and what you're going to hear in this panel back to your family, to your friends, to your employers, to your coworkers, and really focus on the solutions that we can put in place for our community. So as we reflect on what we just shared, I think we can agree that Beyond the Bridge is powerful, and it's at times very sobering. My life is not worthless. It's isolating, demoralizing, depressing, invisible. Those are some of the words that we heard spoken tonight. But it's also hopeful. Dignity plus respect and supportive services equals 80 to 90% success rates. I think we have an opportunity. We saw our filmmakers travel more than 40,000 miles across the country asking one question: how can we solve homelessness in a comprehensive way? And what they discovered was surprising for some and should be encouraging for all of us. There are real solutions, and some communities are proving they work. My own life has included moments of housing insecurity and other barriers that can hold families back. I definitely saw members of my family represented in that film tonight. And I know what it feels like when systems fail, and how transformative it can be when communities choose to build better ones. And again, I want to thank you for being here tonight to say, I choose to build a better community. I choose to build better systems in Monterey County. And I'll say I agreed to be here tonight because I believe Beyond the Bridge gives us a guide for moving from empathy to action, and a way of doing things together, even when we don't all see the problem the same way. Our panel here tonight are leaders who approach homelessness from different philosophies, perspectives, and lived experiences. Some work within the Housing First model, others have relied upon more traditional strategies, and some are going to challenge us to think about accountability and a personal responsibility. This diversity of thought matters because solving complex problems like unsheltered homelessness will take honest dialogue and collaboration across perspectives. We brought this panel together that reflects the sectors and partnerships it will take to create lasting change. You'll find more about their impressive work in your program, but I want to briefly introduce everyone up here. And if you can wave as I say your name. We have Mark Drevers, co-founder and CEO of Organic Grow LLC. Hey, Mark. Jessica Finney, Community Grants Director at Central California Alliance for Health. Eric Johnson, CEO of R3 Builders, Rehabilitation, Restoration, and Respite. Mike LaBar, Mayor of King City. Megan Marshall, Executive Officer of the California Interagency Council on Homelessness. Our Monterey County Sheriff, Tina Nieto. Mayor of the City of Salinas, Anna Velasquez, and also District Director for State Senator District 4. And we also have the producers of Beyond the Bridge, not just the film, but the movement, Don Sawyer and Tim Hashko of A Bigger Vision Films. So again, thank you all for being here and for your leadership and for agreeing to engage in this dialogue tonight. Here's how we're going to spend our time. We'll begin with reflections on the film and what resonates locally. We'll then look at strategies and partnerships that could help us dramatically reduce unsheltered homelessness in Monterey County. And we'll close by focusing on action, with what each of us can do to help keep momentum alive. I wanted to say that tonight is about hope, but it's also about responsibility. Let's use what we've seen and the honest perspectives about what we're about to hear to work together, build trust, and move towards solutions. Are you guys ready? We're gonna get started. So the first question, I'm actually going to invite each of you 10 seconds. What moment in this film resonated with you the most and why? Go ahead, Eric. Move down the line.
Yep.
You're on.
I think the testimonies were terrific of the individuals that climbed out of hardship. Some of the faith community involvement and spiritual transformation too, that was so important to this is forgotten a lot. So I love to see that.
Thank you. You got to hand them back.
I think for me it was the story from the last gentleman, that it was his daughter and this big tear, rolling down her cheek. My mother and I were homeless in my young life. And we were not treated with the same respect and dignity that I hope to instill in our state programs. And so it's been my commitment and my service to see my mother in everything that I do. So that really resonated with me.
For me, it was the common theme throughout the whole movie, which is that it takes partnerships, it takes collaboration, it takes everybody working together to make solutions happen and to bring real change.
It's okay, you can clap.
That was my biggest takeaway, that no matter how big or small a community is, you all have the same elements. You have law enforcement, you have healthcare, you have service providers, you have everybody. You have all the elements to be successful.
I think for me it was the idea of housing first and really making sure that we didn't expect from our homeless community what we don't expect from ourselves. So I think the one line was, let them manage their problems behind closed doors like the rest of us.
I think for me, it's also the housing first, the collaboration. We don't do this in silos. It actually takes partnerships. But I think for me, at the end, also that there's no throwaway people. And when the veteran talked about his daughter, I remember the first time I went to the encampment and I saw a person that I remember when I was in high school. And what I could see that little boy in elementary school that went with me. I could see his face as an adult, but I could see his face as a child. And so I think many of us, when we go out there and we see there is no throwaway people, and they are human just like us.
I think what struck me the most is around giving people choice, and not giving them, but just, making space for people to make their own choices for their own lives. And reflecting on the places of trauma that a lot of people come from, and making space for healing, and having a peaceful place to do that. There was also a line in there, the implementation did not go perfectly. And I think sometimes that even when it's a wonderful collaboration, we all have to kind of give ourselves some grace if we're in that collaboration, that maybe it's not going to go all according to plan, but as long as the intention is good, the planning is good, and we just keep moving forward with that good intention, good things will happen.
It takes really big balls.
Mark gets the award.
Yeah, it actually takes leadership. What I saw up there, there were a few individuals that really stepped out and put it all on the line. I'm not sure how that happens here. The other one that struck me was it didn't have a lot of business people talking. They did not seem to be a part of the film. And I know that they, I'm sure, were behind the scenes, but I'd be interested to know more.
And what struck me from the film was all the different perspectives and the different ways people saw the homelessness situation. And some of us had an opportunity to spend last night actually with the filmmakers, and we got into some deep discussions about that, because I'm not a big proponent of saying housing first. And because of my lived experiences, I get the thing, well, you have to give them a house. And I'm a big proponent, though, of the housing first model, which is permanent housing with supportive services. So that's my big takeaway, is educating people what it is and what it isn't.
That's a really good question. So I asked the panel to respond in this way because I think it's really important to recognize that they're all up here as individuals and humans, and they're responding to this film in exactly the same way you are. And so in addition to their personal, professional roles and the expertise that we're asking them to bring to this conversation, we're also bringing to it their reactions and their responses. And so wanted to ground a little bit in how you might be responding as we move through the questions. So I'm going to moderate this in such a way where I've identified, you've seen some of the questions, I've identified someone who I'm going to ask to kick off the response to that question, pretty much move us through it. If you have a burning desire to also respond, you are welcome to do so. I will butt in and keep us moving forward. I may challenge you, I may ask your other panelists to do so as well. So let's do this. So my first question I'm going to direct both to Mayor LaBarre and to Eric. And I was hoping that you could talk to us about how do the solutions highlighted in Beyond the Bridge compared with what you see currently happening in our community?
A lot of similarities. So in King City, we had a large homeless encampment down in our riverbed. This was something that brought community members asking, what can we do? We need to get them out. We're worried about fires or health and safety issues. But fortunately, I was part of a council that saw this, that it's not just move people out because that doesn't solve the problem. So we started the process of going forward for a permanent supportive housing grant through the state. We were successful in that. We had a lot of support within our community because they saw that addressing multiple issues at the same time, and at the same time they were also seeing this wasn't just about putting into a shelter, but this was actually giving them a place to live and having the services that will help them, because we firmly believe at our city that every path a person is on that brings them to homelessness, the path out is individualized and needs to be customized so that they can be successful. I'm sure many of you heard that through this process, our developer basically absconded with money and killed the project. I was very happy to be part again of the council and the city administration and our great city manager, Steve Adams, who all together, thank you, Roxanne. We could have easily just thrown our hands up and said, we're done, we tried, we did our best, sorry everybody. But we all pulled together with all of our partners, and through those conversations, figured out a path forward. The county was a crucial partner in that, but everybody from the coalition of the Continuum of Care, the Coalition of Homeless Service Providers, absolutely was there helping us to get to the end, because we had put those individuals in temporary housing that was only supposed to be for 6 months. It ended up being just about 2 years before we got the project reignited, and it's now getting the renovations going on. And this project will effectively house all the homeless individuals in King City. And it kind of ties back into what you said. No matter the size of your community, if you have the will and you're ready to do the work, you can actually solve the problems in your community. And when you do that, it helps every other community. So it's tough, a lot of headaches, But I'm looking forward to the day, because I've already asked, make sure I'm there on move-in day, because I want to thank every one of those individuals that have stepped up and have taken advantage of the opportunity, because their lives are going to be so much better going forward. That's what you were looking for, right?
I think so, yeah. So
if
I say
I
what
could keep going on and on, because you did give an elected official a mic.
I did. But so collaboration, flexibility, pivot, problem solving.
And political will.
Political will. Thank you. Yeah. How about you, Eric? You've been in this industry for a long time, working all over.
Compliment you on King City. We used to take food, grocery bags down to people in the river there. One of the funny stories, Don Chapin, who most of you probably know by name, ran into this very creative family that was living in the river, and they were growing row crops. I mean, they were phenomenal. But they had a Don Chapin generator to pump water out of the ground so they could drink it down there. And so I hassled Don about putting the generator out in the community, but it was a great collaborative way of making something happen down there. But what happened from then until you housed people was absolutely phenomenal, and a marvelous model for what we should be doing in small communities and larger communities. So thank you. That was great. I think there are some critical things we need to do. One is we have to be innovative about our housing. We cannot continue to build housing at the cost that it's costing us. It's $1.4 million right now to build a unit up in San Francisco of quote-unquote affordable housing. Our latest affordable housing units in Monterey County were $800,000. That's not sustainable, it's not affordable. It's not even attainable, which is what we have to. So one thing we have done in all of our wisdom and guidance and everything else is creating modular housing that we can build in partnership with the prisons. So Soledad Prison, we have a program there where we're building modular housing in the prison that trains up prisoners to build in construction trades so they get employed when they get out. Low barrier to entry, by the way, for prisoners post-imprisonment. We can build them there. We can't pay prisoners, but we can give them credentials to get them out of the prison sooner, which is great. And they come out again ready to go on apprenticeships. We've done a couple of those at Rancho Cielo, so it's training students up there as well in the construction trades up there. And then we're building a little factory right now with a Teen Challenge program over in Ceres to build housing in a rehab program. Again, teaching people there, students as well out of the junior college and so on, to get into trades. The modular housing we built, we put on church properties. And we do that because there's church properties all over our communities that have excess property, and they want to extend their mission to helping people coming out of homelessness. It's a beautiful model, if you will, because it takes the cost of land out of the equation too, so it lowers the cost of housing. But it puts communities together. And these communities are absolutely critical because people live in communities. Sometimes it's a dysfunctional community, but it's community, right? And that's why it works so well, by the way, with veterans. Veterans that live together in housing and collaboration afterwards have one of the lowest recidivism rates of people come out of imprisonment of any community because they're used to living together, they're used to cooperating together. So we got to bring down the cost of housing. Secondly, we have got to get private financing into the mechanism. One of the really cool models out of Atlanta called Roots actually has an investment, real estate investment trust fund that allows anyone to invest in a housing development up to $100 and in ownership of that community. So that includes renters who are living there who might not be able to afford to buy a house, but you know what, they can become investors now. And they take care of their properties, and they're now getting a return on investment from this. It's a private financing mechanism. It brings down by the cost of not having to also have prevailing wages required in government contracts and government financing, which jacks up prices on housing developments by about 30 to 40%. So you got to be creative about your financing. A great organization called Self-Help Bank over in the Central Valley. They've created a product where they actually create families that want to create a community and build a community together to do some of their own sweat equity in their house. The cost of the house or the value of the house might be $300,000. They help in the building process as much as they can on site. They get $100,000, for example, in sweat equity. So they have a $300,000 house with a $200,000 loan.
Eric, I think you've given us some really good examples, both locally what we've done and then also some potential models that we can look at in other communities. And I think that for the continued problem solving, that's so important, right? We need to know what are people doing throughout our community that's innovative, what are they doing in other communities so that we can look at those opportunities and see if they fit for us here. And while you were talking, it made me think about, I want to turn down to Jessica from Central California Alliance for Health. And if you could talk to us a little bit about what the Alliance has been doing as it relates to getting people housed. I think that's a really interesting and innovative model.
Sure, thank you. I know it just rolls right off the tongue, right? Central California Alliance for Health. Yeah, the Alliance, we have kind of two ways that we are able to contribute to the solutions around solving homelessness. We are a state contracted Medi-Cal managed care plan. So we're the Medi-Cal plan for Monterey County, where 1 and 2 Monterey County residents are part of our membership. We also have members in Santa Cruz and San Benito and Merced and Mariposa. So we have kind of a variety in communities we're serving, but in every single one of them, homelessness is an issue, housing costs are an issue, and just affordability in general. So the state in 2020, the Department of Healthcare Services implemented what we call CalAIM, so California Advancing and Innovating in Medi-Cal, and they were able to put into the Medi-Cal benefit support for navigating folks to find housing and help them sustain that housing and pay for housing deposits. Also folks who are experiencing homelessness, if they were being discharged from a hospital with nowhere to go, they could go to a recuperative care facility and then have some transitional housing as well while they found a more permanent solution for their housing. And so all of these it was a big wave, really a lot to pull together in terms of types of organizations who we call providers, or contracted providers, to come together, learn what does this look like as a service in the Medi-Cal delivery system, where people get paid by billing claims. It's very, it's an insurance company, right, essentially. So it was kind of a new world for a lot of organizations to try and learn how to do this. It was definitely new for us as a managed care plan to bring these new types of benefits on. So we're still learning every day, and we're looking at things like, how do we do this better now? We've implemented. How do we refine it now? How do we make it smoother for the providers who are contracting with us to deliver these services? How do we make it better for the members' experience to be able to stay in housing that they're able to find through these services? So that's kind of on the service delivery side. And then we've also, we're in a position where we had reserve funding that we were able to implement something called our Medi-Cal Capacity Grant Program. And that started in 2015. It was when Affordable Care Act was being implemented. Medi-Cal membership grew by 50%. And we just knew we had to support the providers and the community organizations who are serving Medi-Cal members. So we did start with grants, and then we started to think can we fund housing? Is that a thing? Can we do that? Because it was well before CalAIM. And other health plans were starting to go there, so we just went there. And we offered capital grants to folks like Chispa and MidPenn. And those housing developments are still standing, and there's still some of those original Medi-Cal members who were placed in those units that were dedicated for Alliance members are still living there. So when we invested in permanent supportive housing, we meant permanent. So even if they're not even on Medi-Cal anymore, maybe something's changed in their income level and they are able to get insurance through a job perhaps, they still have that unit that was dedicated to a Medi-Cal member. And that's what we want to invest in is, sustainable housing for people, no matter what. And so we're able to take additional funds from the state as well as our grant dollars and leverage those. And we've been able to fund, I think it's about 25 different housing developments in our 5 counties, and a number of them here in Monterey. So we're able to help on the housing stock side and sustainably on the housing services side.
Thank you. I think that's We heard in the film about the federal government can't fund it all, but we're taking some federal dollars, we're taking some state dollars, we're doing some innovative things locally, so that's, thank you. I'm gonna look at you now, Megan, and I'm gonna ask you to think about two questions together. So, what misconceptions about homelessness does this film help challenge? And what do you see cities that are reducing unsheltered homelessness, like what do they have in common? Like,
So I'll start with the second question first. The cities and counties that we see successfully reducing unsheltered homelessness, chronic homelessness, population-specific homelessness, whether that's veterans or families or youth, consistently across the board are investing local dollars to bring alongside state and federal resources, recognizing that most of those are either tied to entitlements, which requires somebody to be eligible for something other than just the circumstances of their homelessness, and recognizing that doesn't take you very far, right? And so we've seen, I think we're at 9 or 10 very large counties in California now with their big city partners as well, who are seeing drastic reductions in homelessness, and across the board it's because they're making those investments alongside their state partners and the federal resources that remain. Yeah. And you'll have to remind me of the first question because I backed into that one.
Misconceptions about homelessness in film help challenge.
Yeah, this I think they sort of rattled off like the top 5, but there's any number of them. But the top that we contend with is that these are all drug users. These are all crazy people who are in the circumstance because of their mental illness, because of their substance use. And what you saw in the film is, from my own 20 some odd years of field experience, it's absolutely not true. This has been a crisis, decades in the making, long before we see now, 18-year-olds in our own communities who are experiencing homelessness. This predates that person's individual experience, and the film did a fantastic job of dispelling those untruths.
Absolutely. So I'm going to turn it down to you, Sheriff, and I'm picturing those law enforcement officers on their horses riding down the street in the film. And so I'd like to invite you to talk to us about how did the film open your eyes to unexpected collaborative partners that can be involved, and how can you imagine that playing out here in Monterey County?
I've actually seen the horses because I spent 28.5 years with LAPD. I've been to Skid Row, looked at some of the solutions, or I don't know if they call them solutions, but some of the things that were done to deal with the homelessness issue down there in Skid Row, actually. But where I see it working here, again, and I actually put thought into this, I even Googled some stuff, and because we got our homework ahead of time to be able to sound intelligent. Yeah, well, and then we also have our lived experience, right? And being here in Monterey County, I already have lived experience with some of the issues that we've had to deal with. Powell River, some of the temporary housing that we dealt with the problems. When we, especially during COVID, when we put unsheltered people in one place and don't provide the supportive services, what can happen with that? I've seen where the government's thrown lots of money at it, and it helps bring the numbers down, but then the money dries up. How do you sustain this? It's interesting. I think the biggest thing that I think that would work here in Monterey County is, one, we all need to start talking to each other about sharing our dollars, especially with the CalAIM monies that are coming out to the state in Monterey County, because we're all fighting for the same dollars. So we've got to work with those dollars better as we get these different grants. And I'll give you an example. In the sheriff's office, we're opening up a navigation center, a transitional center for the incarcerated population that are coming out for the Medi-Cal. And I never thought as a sheriff I'd be hiring people who were Medi-Cal billers, but I'm doing that now to look at the folks that are coming back into our communities, to look at their 90, 60, 30 day for the warm handshake as we return them back into the communities to get them, you know, involved with all the other supportive services. Policing is not the issue. We're not going to solve homelessness. We just move them from one side of the river to the other, like in Pajaro or down in King City. We need everybody to help us with this issue, and quite frankly, I'd like to be out of the business and not be sitting up here. And I think if and the sheriff will always be involved, or your chief, or the police, because we help people feel safer, even though my experience is I've never had to deal with violent homeless people. Again, another perception that even our service providers have when they're dealing with going out and providing the services. But we've got to work better together and look at the dollars better, and quit judging each other from the languages that we use and the perspectives that we come from.
So, Mayor/District Director Velasquez, Anna, I'm going to turn to you right now and see if you could elaborate a little bit more on some of the strategies shown in the film that you believe could be adapted here, or strategies that you're seeing being used in your communities.
Yeah, thank you. I think I resonated with a lot of the strategies, and I think a lot of it, when they talked about the mayor's office, and I know you went to different communities, and there has to be leadership, and there has to be champions. And I know for us, at least in our community, and I'll speak to that, you know, we had an encampment also in the river, and it had been there for a while. And when we started with the point in time count, you know, the first year we did it, we saw there was, you know, probably only 20 people out in the river, and we went back the next year. We did when we went back for the point in time count, we saw that there was an increased number in the river. And at that time, it was important to be able to understand that we had a problem, and we wanted to make sure that we addressed that issue, and not necessarily a problem in terms of the people were the problem, but that there was an issue. And one of the important initiatives for me has always been housing. And many of our cities, as we know, we have a housing element, and part of that housing element that is a mandate from the state is we have to look at the housing for every person in our community. How do we provide housing for everyone? And everyone means everyone. That means also people that are unsheltered. So looking at that and saying, how do we ensure that we're also looking at the population? What can we do? At that time, especially small rural communities, it's really difficult because we don't have the general fund, we don't have the budgets. But the county had the Lead Me Home plan. And at that time we said, you know, how can we look at the county plan? And a lot of times what we do as cities, and we have to make sure that these documents that we take multiple years to prepare, we invest multiple dollars in preparing these documents, that they don't sit in a shelf. They don't sit somewhere and we never look at it, and we don't really implement those outcomes. So we looked at the county's plan and said, how can Soledad look at the initiatives that are in that Lead Me Home plan? Maybe we can't accomplish all of them, but what are the ones that we can accomplish? The council adopted the plan, and with the adoption of the plan, we started working with the county to be able to look at how can we position ourselves to be able to obtain, when there is funding available through the state, to be able to have some of that funding. So through the leadership of the council, through the leadership of our staff as well, in 2023, working with the county, the state had the encampment resolution funding. So we were able to partner with the county to submit an application for the encampment resolution funds, and the city was able, in partnership with the county received funding, and the city was able to receive 4.7 million to be able to address some of the housing portion of the encampment resolution funds, and also the cleanup of the riverbed in the encampment as well. So that was really important, and it took a process, and part of that process was also doing the workshops. It was also going out to our communities and making sure that we were having a conversation with our community, because as what we saw in the film, not everybody wants to help. Not everybody wants to address the problem. And we saw some community members saying, hey, people have housing issues, why are you helping those people? instead of helping people that are working and trying to make ends meet. And as the mayor, I had to make sure that I was having the conversation of saying, my task and our task as a council is to ensure that we're looking at the housing needs of everyone. And if we're being provided with funding, I am not gonna not accept the funding because community members are gonna have an issue with it. So it's really doing the education. We did workshops, we did community workshops. We invited, the individuals with lived experience to be part of that workshop so they can have conversations and they can be part of the conversation. They can be part of the space to be able to ensure that they felt that they had a voice, that they had a space, and that they were valued. And that was really critical. So some of those strategies that we heard were really resonated for our community because we were able to implement some of that, and we're excited to be able to say that we're able now, the city also looking at what are the city resources that we had. We had an empty lot that was underutilized, and so what the city did is how do we utilize that site that we can temporarily use to be able to provide housing, temporary shelter, temporary housing for those individuals that we have, that we relocated from the riverbed. So like Mayor LaBar, we're excited to be able to say, for a small rural community of our size, about 20,000 people, we're excited that we'll be able to say, yes, we did provide, and we did, I'm not gonna say we solved the homeless problem, but we were able now to house 24 people, and we were able to reunite a mother with her 2 children, and being a mother myself, I think that's amazing to be able to do that one person at a time. Are we gonna solve every person? But if we do one at a time, I think that's a success story. And so it's exciting to be able to see that happening in our community, in a small rural city like ours, where we are gonna provide that housing for 24 individuals, and being able to see that the city is creating that space, utilizing our resources, working with the county and working with the state, because this doesn't happen in silos, and we need all of our partnerships to be able to make that happen. And I think that's really important for me. On the state side, I'll say, Yuri, if I can, is we have,
briefly.
Briefly, because I know that we talk about systemic problems, and just to give you into context, right, the county, as the state, we have a 2.7 million housing shortage. And in order for us to really address that, it's gonna take a collective to be able to solve that problem, and it's all of us working together. We don't do this alone. So it requires local government, it requires state government, it requires federal government to be able to support and solve the housing crisis, but also to be able to put more money and invest more money into the mental resources and the other resources that are needed, the wraparound services, to be able to support our population.
Just a burning desire to just add on to that and to underscore, I think for the sake of the audience, you have 2 mayors here who are deeply committed, and this is the type of leadership that if we had this at every city, regardless of size and regardless of geography, we would not be in the issue that we're in as a state. I think it's really important for the audience to know that the 2 projects that these mayors are speaking about, there's a 3rd project that happened to have been applied for by Monterey County on behalf, though, of an encampment that is actually in the city of Watsonville. That project has been delayed years at this point because that same leadership, because that same passion to move this work forward is unfortunately non-existent. So I just want to applaud the 2 mayors that we have on this stage and say, on behalf of the administration, on behalf of the state of California, thank you for serving as a model. King City, when I met the mayor, I said, you're the mayor of King City, let me tell you how great your city manager is. To have a city manager who is the highest official in any city government, non-elected by the way, to have that level of commitment to seeing this work through is exactly why these communities are successful. So, thank you.
And thank you for that. And I do want to acknowledge our city manager, Megan Hunter, who is in the audience. And I also have to give her a shout out because she has been amazing through this process and having a lot of the logistics, a lot of the, just a lot of that fortitude to be able to move us through. So I just want to give her a shout out because it does happen through collaboration and partnership.
Thank you. And I want to say, I think we saw it in the video, we're seeing it here on the stage. So as you go back to your community, one thing we saw in Houston, the mayor saying, I have to be here. We're seeing it on our stage. The mayor of King City, the mayor of Soledad. Where is your mayor? That's what you need to ask if you're living in an incorporated city. I think the other thing, I know you're not supposed to correct elected officials, but I'm the moderators, I'm going to fact check. The Lead Me Home plan is actually a plan, and as a county employee, I would love to take credit for that and give credit to, well, I can, but it's actually a plan that was developed by our local coalition of homeless services providers. So, and that plan is about to enter into its 5th year. And Roxanne was the leader at that point and is now in the county, and I'm really proud to say that the county has adopted it. I'm happy to hear that your city has adopted it. This is another thing that you should be going back to your incorporated city and saying, where are you on the Lead Me Home plan? Because this is our local blueprint. This is our local service providers, our individuals with lived experience coming together to talk to us about the solutions that we should be implementing. So,
and can I add something, because it's a burning thing?
Burn.
And I never thought I'd be like defending the board of supervisors, but the issue that it's running into problems. The supervisors have been very supportive of the project. Again, listen what the words being saying. The mayor, the city council. So Wendy, I can't believe I said that.
All right, so I want to make sure I get a chance to everyone on our panel to be included. So now I'm going to turn to, I'm going to ask Mark and Clement to weigh in on this next question. So Mark, you started this by noting the lack of participation in the film by members of the business community. And so what metrics are most important to our community to measure impact beyond just bringing people home? What are the metrics we need to be looking at that's going to bring our business community to the table? And I'm going to have the same question for you, Clement, but I really want to frame it around the conversation that we heard around health and mental health, and particularly around race and women in that. So what metrics should we be looking at? Do we need to be measuring?
I'm clearly not a public official. I don't know how to turn on a mic. So I think when I look at it, what does a business person care about? It cares about quantification. I think a lot of the metrics are pretty straightforward. Are there people on the street or not? I mean, I can see that. I don't need much sophistication. I'm sure there's a ton that you need to track, but that's kind of a big one. The other one is, I think the group up here could focus on how do you quantify? Because if it costs X million of dollars to deal with the problem and having people out on the street, because it costs money, a bunch of money, I would look at making an investment that eliminated that expenditure, and it would cost me money to make the investment as opposed to other people making investments that don't really do anything. Was that kind of clear? Yeah, I think so. So I would focus on quantification. The second thing I would say is that business is extremely good at adjusting. So if there's a plan out there that actually makes sense and you can articulate it and you can quantify it, business would absolutely look at making the investment. And I think it's a big amount of money. It's a pool of money that you're going to have to deal with it because the government stuff's going to dry up at some point, isn't it? I think that's what I'm hearing.
Midnight.
Sorry. Business will not move that fast. But anyway, those are the things that I would look at. Quantification, view it, present it to business as an investment, and be clear about the money you're spending, and then ask business to make adjustments and participate in it.
Thank you. So I heard that as both an invitation and an offer to make introductions. Is that what everybody else heard?
I've told Jill a million times, I don't think it's a lack of dollars on the business side. I think it's a lack of ideas coming to the business community. And I'm not saying the ideas don't exist, okay? So I'm not being critical. I'm just saying it hasn't been communicated in a way that the business community can understand and make an investment in. Okay.
So to add to that, I'd say a couple of things. One, I think that the money is there. And we've seen it in our community in a number of ways, but I think the most obvious way for me that we've seen it in the community is the amount of money that is poured into our youth through the Rancho Cielo Youth Campus. I think taking a model like that, we've got the business involvement, we have the people in the community that are really ready to see change with our kids in our community, and I think that same focus can be done with homelessness. On the healthcare side, what we're really trying to do is make sure we provide access to anyone that needs it, from keeping our emergency room open, which has become a primary care site, to actually taking a mobile clinic out to areas in the community where we can provide free services to the community members that need them. I just think pulling these types of models together where we've already seen some success, and then adding on, the work that each individual group can do. I would say housing is maybe not in our wheelhouse yet, but access to healthcare and managing social determinants of health is something that's really a focus for healthcare, and that's something we can do and partner with the community organizers that are really doing this work to support homelessness here.
So one metric, potentially the reduction in urgent visits to the ER by unsheltered persons, because now they're in housing and they're being able to get those wraparound services and be able to address their health needs before it shows up at the ER.
Absolutely.
Right? Okay, thank you. And Derek?
I just want to add two more comments. Number one, I don't think we do a good job of inviting business into the issue. If you look at the coalition makeup, you don't have businesses at the table or business leaders. You don't have faith leaders at the table that are helping, being invited into solving the problem. I'd like to see businesses have a platform for creating employment pathways for people that need a place to be employed in our county that's sustainable, and that they'll take a chance on people that they might not otherwise take chances on because they have a criminal record or whatever it may be. But our businesses need to be pathways to employment for people in that context, and that's part of the wraparound services, I think, on the back of this, so critical. So I think we undersell businesses and we undersell faith communities. We don't ask them to do enough because we give them what I would consider some menial tasks sometimes, instead of shooting for the moon and giving them some tasks that take advantage of the incredible skill sets in all the businesses and the faith communities that we have, the people that just want to help, but they're not invited to the table. So we got to be creative about how we do that.
So Eric, again, this is the sheriff. I have seen models work, even in Los Angeles, the Pacific Palisades Task Force on Homelessness. It was probably one of the few models that worked in LA. And you know who put that together? The business people. And they brought in the other people to make it work. Now, Palisades is burnt down, unfortunately. So I don't know where their model is now, because I still talk to those folks. But it was the business people, because they do quantify things. They want to know where every dime is spent, and they don't want to waste any of it. And so they were great partners to deal with some of the issues on the west side of LA. And it was the only model working in LA at that time.
Anna?
Yeah, so I'm just going to put on, just on my state hat, because I know through the legislature, they did pass legislation to allow for housing to be built on faith, religious, right, faith communities. So I think looking at what we do have, what resources we have not tapped into, and how do we bring those into also the partnership.
That's a great point. Like, how are we actually using the tools that have been made available to us? Did I see Jessica wanting to say something?
Yeah, I just want to add in on one of the questions about the metrics, and you were talking about, reduced emergency department utilization, but also readmissions to hospitals. So that kind of continuum of recuperative care for folks who are experiencing homelessness, all the way to being housed and having a safe place to live is going to reduce that readmission. But all of those services, like wraparound services or whatever you want to call them, supportive services, that folks are connected to once they do access to care. So if they are in the emergency department, or if they are admitted to the hospital, the connection to care managers and to navigators, community health workers, those kinds of supportive staff who can say, okay, what do you need now so you don't find yourself here again? Like, is it that chronic disease that you need support in managing? Is it the medication you need? Do you need a wheelchair? Like, what are all those things, right? Do you need just food delivered to your home? Because all of those things, like through CalAIM, have been built into the Medi-Cal delivery system now for those folks. It's complicated. We all know healthcare is complex, right? So accessing those things can still be tough, but those folks who are the case managers, community health workers, they're the glue, and they're the folks that are the trusted messengers that really help Medi-Cal members navigate the system and get what they need.
Great points. All right, I'm about to fail as your moderator because we're at 8:29 and we're supposed to be done at 8:30, but I do want to see if we have the opportunity for one question from the audience. And while that question is coming forward, I'm going to let you all know that I'm asking you, and I'm changing the question a little bit, what is one action that you can take, that you're thinking about taking as you walk out of this room tonight? And I'm going to ask that question of every person in this room as well. When you walk out, what's an action I can take to keep momentum moving forward? And then I'm going to invite Dawn to talk to us briefly about how do we keep momentum alive. So you be pondering what action you think you can take while I invite one question from the audience. I see a gentleman over there in the yellow shirt.
Yeah, I want to start out with a statement first. One thing I didn't hear mentioned is that pets, a lot of especially women have dogs with them because it's the warning system that lets them know that somebody's going to come and approach them and possibly do harm. A lot of systems don't allow those people to bring their pets with them, and it's like a child. You're not going to leave your child behind. Okay, so that was just a statement. Okay. The other thing is that there's an economy that exists out there, and when you break up an encampment, you break up people's economy. If you put them into housing, you have to replace that economy somehow. You have to give them the opportunity to be able to make money. You can't just throw somebody in, throw in keys, and show up once in a while and say, hey, how are you doing? Okay. So the question I want to ask is, every one of you that's sitting up there, I want you to think about what you are going to do differently after having seen this film. This is my 5th time watching this movie. And I'm going to watch it again and again and again, and every time I want to bring people, especially like you're talking about the mayors, coming, and the council members and the supervisors to come and see this, to make that change.
Sir, what's your name?
Robert.
Robert gives you the last question. What are you going to do differently?
Can I just answer his question in regards to pets? So we understood that in the encampment that we had in Soledad, because we heard that over and over again in terms of the pets. So our encampment does allow pets. So we do have that. And part of ours, we also have a homeless outreach coordinator who is coordinating and supporting our unsheltered homeless people. So thank you for that. We noticed that, and we have that as part of our program.
Thank you. All right, Malabar.
Takes a second.
No, I just want to answer his question.
Yeah.
For me, I'm not going to do anything different because he nailed it. It is about housing with supportive services. That is the answer. And so I will just keep spreading that message and asking people to watch this film, because that's how you do it. You can't just throw someone in a house. You have to give them the tools and resources so they individually can survive and can find their happiness in life. Thank you.
Anyone else on the panel want to answer Robert's question before we close out? All right, Dawn, how do we keep moving forward? How do we build momentum?
Okay, so the next step for, your county is huge, and I don't have a real picture of, municipalities and all that kind of stuff that's going on here. But I know that you've had great success, and you have, but there's some things that need to be fixed. you know. So your first step, I'll just tell you what Milwaukee did. After they did their plan and they implemented it, they set a table, and the table had the sheriff and the police chief at it. They had healthcare executives at it. It was convened by their downtown business district person who talks like a service provider. She's incredible. And so business was at it. The university was at it, Marquette University was at it. Of course, the county that was driving the whole thing was at it. The city was at it. The COC was at it. And they met for, you know, there originally was going to be 12 months, once a week for 2 hours. You know, and they just had to put that in their schedule. And so then at 12 months, they said we need 6 more months. So they went 18 months meeting like that. And the intention of doing that was everybody was going in a different direction. So once you get everybody committed to it, you know, this death match of finger pointing, you're the problem, you don't do your job right, and all that kind of stuff. Now everybody's sitting in the room, and so you have to talk it out because you're all committed to fixing the problem. And so you develop a shared mission, a shared goal, and eventually you find, like, well, we can't do this because, you know, these barriers here, and the person who can eliminate those barriers are at the table too and say, well, I can do this. And so now you can, you know, use each other, you can combine efforts, you can combine programs, you can do all of these things. And what you really find is that you know, your strategy, the biggest problem that places have is they implement a strategy and they walk away. And, you know, 2 years later, wow, that didn't work. You know, it wasn't the strategy that was a problem. You couldn't deal with it in real time. So your next step is to get a table, and even if you have a table and it's not working, then you need to bring more people to the table. For example, business. Tim and I started this whole thing out with the premise of the biggest untapped ally to homeless services is the business community. And the problem is they are not approached with a business case. You're not making a business case. You're just a bunch of social workers rolling at them saying, you know, oh, and it doesn't work, right? So you need to. What Milwaukee did was they made a huge business case to, you know, top business people, and then the business people sat back and said, okay, we will call you instead of the cops, and that was it. Until they saw it working. And, you know, it took a couple years, and they see it working. They see the downtown is getting cleared. They're seeing that this whole thing is working. And now they fund outreach workers, and they fund different things because now it's a community pride thing. We're the number one, you know, that kind of thing. So, you know, business people are, you know, a lot of them have an athletic type of, you know, competitive. We want to be the number one. If your community is great on an issue that most communities aren't, you know, you know, so definitely can get them. In Indianapolis, there's this thing called the Greater Indianapolis Multi-Faith Alliance. Indianapolis just implemented a Streets to Home program, 8.1 million, 2.7 came from the city, first time ever. 2.7 came from a foundation that's just for services. 2.7 is being raised by the faith community and, you know, some other foundations. Normally, truthfully, faith communities in homeless services, homeless response systems are avoided like the plague, unless it's a shelter, because of all the requirements, you know, rules, different things. in Indianapolis, and I was very encouraged by this. They came to the table, they were invited to the table, they were respected at the table, and they found a way to work together with something that they can't slap a cross or a fish on, right? So and now it's a big community effort, and they are robust. You know, it's led by this 5'2" rabbi who's just, you know, dynamic. So the table, your next step to keep the momentum going is to get the right people at the table. And I will tell you this, that we've seen nowhere in the country where a homeless response system is being successful where it is not constructed to serve the needs of the people versus the needs of the people who are serving the people. That makes sense, but in practice over the years since the 80s, it's a proven failure to do it that way. The ones that work are the ones that look at the people as people. We tried to do that in the film. We tried to show that these are just like the rest of us. You construct it for their needs, and you add in peer support. You know, people with lived experience to be part of the solution, part of the system to help reach back and bring people forward. That's the first thing. That's your foundational attitude. And then it is simply adopting an attitude of, are we going to let this problem beat us? Are we not good enough? You know, you have to ask yourself, are we not good enough to solve this? You know, and when you have that failure, when you have communities throwing their hands in the air, it's because they're not looking at the people. You know, if you look at that person as your cousin out there or your family member or whatever, you are going to get it done. And, you know, like the mayor said, political will is everything when it comes to this work.
It really is. I think you just said we tried to do this in the film, and I want to tell you that I watched this film twice. You did this in the film. Like, you told the story very well. You humanized the people. You showed us the levels of collaboration, the sectors that need to be involved. And I just want to say on behalf of our entire community, thank you so much for bringing your film Hilda Monterey County. Thank you so much to Dorothy's Place and Jill Allen for bringing this to us, to the Community Foundation for sponsoring this event, to everyone sitting up on this panel who was doing a lot of things all day long, but who literally within the last week got a call and asked, could you be here? And they said, yes, I will be there to be a part of this conversation. We have people with passion and will and ability in our community, both on the stage and in this audience and who aren't in this room tonight. And so I want us to all leave here with solutions and collaboration and a healthy future, political will, and accountability in our minds, and to know that, as it says in the film, we can move beyond the bridge, we can find a solution for homelessness, we can do this in our community if we look at people as people and solve the solution community by community. My understanding is there's supposed to be a slide that comes up that tells you if you want to how to get more information, and a phone number and an email where you can continue to be a part of the dialogue, continue to be a part of the solution. So on behalf of everyone here tonight, on behalf of the event organizers, thank you so much for spending this time with us. I hope that you have been inspired and learned something, and we will